The airport buzzed like a restless hive that morning. Announcements echoing, luggage wheels clattering, and the smell of burnt espresso drifting through the air. But at gate 17, a silence sliced through the noise when a sharp voice barked, "Step back, ma'am. This pass looks forged." Every head turned. A TSA officer, his badge polished brighter than his manners, stood towering over a composed woman in a navy blue blazer. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Carter, though no one here seemed to care. Her passport, boarding pass, and official envelope lay scattered on the floor like trash beneath her heels. She didn't move, didn't even blink, as the officer's spit hit her cheek. "You people think dressing up makes you special?" he sneered, waving her papers as if holding evidence of a crime. "This is first class, not a charity flight." Evelyn bent down slowly, gathering her belongings with deliberate calm. The crowd whispered. Phones tilted up to record. A small silver pin, tarnished but polished with care, slipped from her lapel and rolled across the floor. She picked it up quietly, brushing the dust from its engraved eagle wings. "Sir," she said evenly, "you're making a mistake." "Am I?" His tone was dripping arrogance. "Because what I see is a forged federal seal and someone lying about her position." He leaned closer, his voice loud enough for the cameras. "Tell me, doctor, which university hands out Pentagon clearances now?" A murmur rippled through the terminal. Evelyn's expression didn't change. She clasped the handle of her briefcase, a weathered leather case handcuffed to her wrist. Inside it was intelligence that could alter the course of international negotiations. She had spent 22 years earning that responsibility. But in this man's eyes, all she was now was a suspect. "Security to gate 17, the officer announced into his radio. "Possible threat with falsified documents." The words possible threat struck like bullets through the air. Two more agents rushed over. A mother nearby pulled her child closer. Someone muttered, "What's happening?" Another whispered, "She looks too calm." "That's suspicious." Evelyn inhaled once, slow, controlled. Her father, a veteran, once told her, "Dignity isn't what they give you. It's what you refuse to surrender." She straightened her blazer and waited. The officer reached for her briefcase. "Open it. Now." "That's classified property," she replied. He smirked. "Everything's classified when you're caught lying." Then he yanked it from her grasp, ripping the lock open. A burst of papers exploded across the terminal floor, each page stamped with red seals and government insignias. The crowd gasped. "See," he barked. "Fake stamps. Even says, confidential." How convenient. A few passengers began recording closer now. The officer's face reddened as he kicked one of the papers aside. "You think we're fools?" But before Evelyn could respond, a voice crackled through every nearby radio. "Federal escort inbound to gate 17. Repeat, federal escort inbound." The officer froze. Passengers turned toward the terminal entrance. 3 individuals in black suits were moving fast, badges flashing, their eyes locked on the scene. The TSA man puffed up his chest, confident he'd be commended. "Glad you're here, agents," he said proudly. "I just stopped a serious breach." The lead agent ignored him, stepping past the crowd, eyes fixed on Evelyn. For a moment, silence swallowed the entire gate. Then, in one swift motion, the agent raised his hand to his temple, saluting her. The crowd gasped. The TSA officer's smile evaporated. "Ma'am," the agent said firmly, "we're sorry for the delay. The Pentagon has been waiting for you." Evelyn exhaled slowly, her expression unreadable. "I suspected you might be." The officer stumbled back, words dying in his throat as the meaning sank in. Cameras flashed, passengers whispered, and one thought echoed in every mind. Who exactly is this woman? They didn't know yet. But by the end of that day, her name would shake the country. 2 hours earlier, before the chaos at gate 17, Dr. Evelyn Carter had walked through the sliding glass doors of the airport with the calm precision of someone who had lived her life under pressure. She wasn't just any traveler catching a flight. She was a senior intelligence strategist for the Department of Defense, carrying classified information that could prevent an international crisis. Her steps were measured, her expression unreadable, her focus razor-sharp. The sun was still climbing the horizon, spilling gold across the polished floors of Terminal C. Her black heels clicked softly, each echo blending with the airport symphony, boarding calls, rolling suitcases, distant chatter. She held her briefcase close, its fingerprint lock humming faintly with built-in encryption. Inside were the newest satellite intercepts from a region on the brink of war. A single leak could ignite global tension. That's why she wore the cuff chain, a protection measure for documents that mattered more than her reputation. On the second floor, she paused at a cafe counter. The barista glanced up, distracted by her military posture and calm authority. "Double espresso, no sugar," she said, sliding her card forward. It wasn't arrogance, it was habit. Years of command taught her to speak clearly, to be direct, to never waste time. As she waited, her phone buzzed. A message from her daughter, Maya, flashed on screen. "Mom, good luck at the briefing. Don't forget, breathe. You've already done the hard part. Love you." Evelyn smiled faintly. Maya was only 19, studying political science, yet her words carried the warmth that kept Evelyn grounded. "Love you more. Tell your father I'll call before takeoff." Her husband, Colonel Raymond Carter, was stationed at a NATO facility overseas. They hadn't seen each other in months, but mutual duty had built their marriage on understanding, not distance. Both had chosen service over comfort, because they believed peace had a price, and someone had to pay it. Evelyn's thoughts were interrupted by a loud argument at a nearby gate. A frustrated traveler shouted about baggage weight, slamming his suitcase against a counter. No one intervened. It reminded her of the world she operated in, everyone watching, few standing up. Her flight was scheduled for 9:10 a.m., first class seat 3A. She arrived early as she always did. The gate agent smiled when she saw the Pentagon authorization papers. "You must be important," the woman joked kindly. Evelyn returned a polite nod. "Just doing my job." But not everyone saw it that way. Across the security checkpoint, Officer David Cross was starting his shift, sipping his energy drink, scrolling through news headlines that blamed government insiders for everything wrong with the country. He saw himself as the protector of order, though his idea of order came with an unspoken bias. His record already had multiple complaints, each buried under bureaucracy. He'd been warned to adjust his attitude toward suspicious-looking passengers, but he'd never learned the lesson. When Evelyn stepped into his lane, confidence in every stride, something in him snapped, a mix of envy, resentment, and ignorance. She didn't even see him at first. She was thinking about the briefing, the generals waiting for her analysis, the intelligence that might save hundreds of soldiers. But he saw her and instantly decided she didn't belong where she was headed. Her past was built on sacrifice. 22 years of military intelligence, 3 combat zones, countless sleepless nights decoding threats before they reached American soil. She'd earned every medal she owned. Yet prejudice didn't see medals. It saw color, it saw gender, it saw threat. She placed her boarding documents on the counter, unaware of the storm approaching behind her. As her name flashed on the departure screen, "Carter, hey," the officer's cold eyes locked on her profile. His hand moved toward his radio. A routine morning was about to turn into a national spectacle, one that would test not just security procedures, but the very meaning of dignity. The airport's hum seemed to fade the moment Officer David Cross stepped into Evelyn's path. His shadow fell across the counter as she handed her boarding documents to the gate agent. "Hold on a second," he interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut through metal. The agent hesitated, glancing nervously between the officer's expression and Evelyn's calm face. Evelyn turned toward him, her posture composed. "Is there a problem, officer?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took her documents, holding them up to the light as if searching for hidden lies. "These seals don't look real," he said flatly. "Government travel authorization, first class, Pentagon seal? Pretty big claims for someone I've never seen before." The surrounding passengers began to slow their pace. A few pretended to check their phones but couldn't resist watching. Evelyn's face remained controlled, though a faint muscle in her jaw tightened. "You're mistaken. Those documents are authentic and cleared through federal protocol." David smirked. That's what they all say. He flipped through the papers like a man looking for an excuse to humiliate. You print these at Kinko's, ma'am? The mockery stung, but Evelyn didn't react. She had faced interrogation in war zones, dictators across negotiation tables. She would not lose her composure to a man hiding insecurity behind a badge. Officer, she said calmly, I suggest you verify the clearance code. You'll find it connects directly to the Department of Defense. He laughed, loud and exaggerated, drawing attention from nearby travelers. Department of Defense, huh? So now you're military too? Maybe you should have picked a more believable lie. The gate agent, Lucy, tried to speak up. Sir, I scanned her documents. They match government credentials. Maybe we should. Stay out of it, David snapped, slamming the papers down. If she's clean, she won't mind waiting for verification. The words verification and security hold spread like wildfire through the watching crowd. Phones lifted higher now, lenses glinting under the fluorescent light. Evelyn felt the humiliation wrapping around her like smoke, but she refused to give it oxygen. She stood straighter, her voice low but firm. You're profiling me, officer. That one sentence froze him. His smirk faltered. Excuse me? You heard me, she said. You've ignored procedure. You haven't scanned my ID or contacted clearance control. You're making assumptions based on who you think I am, not what's in those documents. For a brief second, silence hung heavy between them, until David slammed his palm against the counter. Security to gate 17, he barked into his radio. Possible forgery, suspicious individual, requesting backup. The words echoed through the terminal. A child nearby began to cry. 2 more TSA agents appeared from the side corridor, one of them, Agent Cooper, frowning as he approached. What's going on here? Forgery and possible impersonation of a government officer, David announced, puffing his chest out. She's claiming to be Pentagon staff. Cooper glanced at the documents. His brow furrowed. These look real, Cross. David cut him off sharply. I'm the supervisor here. Don't question my judgment. Passengers began to murmur. Someone whispered, this doesn't look right. Another muttered, poor woman, she's not even resisting. Evelyn kept her hands visible, calm, disciplined, the picture of control. Years of service had taught her that dignity was a weapon stronger than rage. David leaned closer, sneering. You think standing there all calm makes you innocent? You people are good at acting. The phrase you people slipped out before he could catch it. The air in the terminal cracked. Gasps, sharp and audible, rolled through the crowd. Cooper's eyes widened. Cross, he warned under his breath, that's enough. But it wasn't enough for David. His anger had found an audience, and his pride demanded performance. I said step aside, he barked, grabbing Evelyn's briefcase. The handle tore loose with a metallic snap, papers spilling out like confetti. Red seals. Federal insignias. Official Pentagon stamps. Fake, he muttered, grinding one under his shoe. Evelyn's patience finally fractured, her voice trembling with restrained fury. That paper you just stepped on could save American lives. The entire gate went silent. Even David paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Before he could respond, his radio crackled again, this time with a new voice. Federal escort inbound to gate 17. 1 minute. Evelyn didn't move. Her eyes met his. You're about to learn, officer, she said softly, that respect can't be taken, it's earned. The crowd didn't yet understand what was coming. But within 60 seconds, the man who thought he held power would realize he had just destroyed his own. The entire terminal held its breath as tension thickened around gate 17. Every second stretched like glass, ready to shatter. Officer David Cross stood rigid, his hands still gripping the torn handle of Dr. Evelyn Carter's briefcase. Across from him, Evelyn's posture was steel and silence, a storm waiting for purpose. 2 additional TSA officers had arrived by now, their expressions uneasy. They'd heard the call for possible forgery, but were met with a scene that looked nothing like a threat, just a composed woman surrounded by scattered federal papers and one red-faced supervisor losing control. David, One of them said cautiously, "You need to slow down. This doesn't." "Stay out of it," he snapped, his voice cracking with rage. "I've got it under control." But control was the one thing slipping fastest. Dozens of passengers had stopped boarding, phones raised, live streams rolling. Every camera caught the beads of sweat on his forehead and the steady, almost unnerving calm in Evelyn's eyes. She spoke at last, her voice even and deliberate. "You're violating federal protocol, Officer Cross. I've identified myself, provided verifiable credentials, and followed your every instruction. You are now detaining a federal official without cause." David's jaw twitched. "Federal official, huh? That's a cute story. You've got the act down, I'll give you that." A ripple of discomfort swept through the crowd. One man, a businessman in a gray suit, stepped forward timidly. "Officer, maybe you should check her ID properly. That looks real to me." David whirled on him, eyes blazing. "Do you work here? Then step back before you miss your flight and make yourself part of this investigation." The man retreated. The crowd murmured. Evelyn said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than outrage could. "Ma'am," said one of the younger TSA agents softly, "maybe if you just explain what's in the briefcase?" David cut him off. "Don't talk to her. She doesn't explain anything. She follows orders." Evelyn's calm broke for the first time, not in anger, but in conviction. "Orders?" she said quietly. "I've spent half my life giving them, officer." That line struck something invisible but powerful. The younger agent blinked, realizing the weight in her words. David's face, however, twisted with fury. He grabbed one of the papers from the floor, waving it like evidence. "These are fake. Who even uses a red seal anymore?" A nearby passenger whispered, "Those are Pentagon seals." Another added, "He's losing it." "Enough!" David roared. He grabbed Evelyn's wrist, spinning her toward the metal detector. Gasps erupted around them. "You're under detention for presenting fraudulent documentation and interfering with airport security operations." Her hand didn't resist. Her voice, though, was steady and low, the kind of calm that made adrenaline seem useless. "Officer Cross, release me. You're seconds away from a federal offense." He laughed bitterly. "Federal offense? You're lucky I don't." "David!" Agent Cooper interrupted sharply. "Look." Everyone turned toward the far end of the terminal. Through the security glass, 3 figures in dark suits were striding down the corridor with military precision. The crowd parted instinctively. Their badges glinted under the lights. David, still gripping Evelyn's wrist, smirked nervously. "Finally. Real law enforcement. You can thank me later, Doctor." The 3 agents stopped in front of him. The lead one, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a measured tone, looked straight at Evelyn. "Lieutenant Colonel Carter, we apologize for the delay. Your transport briefing has been waiting." The words landed like thunder. Silence fell, absolute and total. Every camera, every pair of eyes, turned toward the woman David had mocked. Evelyn Carter, standing tall and unbroken, met the agent's gaze with quiet authority. David's fingers slipped off her wrist. "Lieutenant Colonel?" he stammered. The lead agent ignored him completely. She stepped forward, raised her hand and saluted. The other 2 followed instantly, their movements crisp and reverent. The sound of their palms striking their brows echoed across the terminal like a gavel of justice. For a long, stunned moment, no one moved. Then the agent spoke again, her tone cutting through the air. "Officer Cross, step back immediately. You've just assaulted a decorated war hero under federal protection." The blood drained from his face. Passengers began whispering, disbelief turning to outrage. Evelyn adjusted her blazer, straightened the pin on her lapel, and looked him in the eye. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of command. "Next time you decide who deserves respect, officer, try earning some first." The officer's radio crackled in his shaking hand. The same voice repeated, almost mocking now. "Federal escort complete. Proceeding with secure extraction." Justice had entered the terminal, and David Cross had just met the reckoning his badge could no longer protect him from. For a few seconds, no one dared to breathe. The sound of suitcase wheels had stopped. Flight announcements went unheard. All that existed was the charged silence at Gate 17, where humiliation had just met its breaking point. Officer David Cross stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he'd just heard. The woman he'd mocked, shoved, and accused wasn't a fraud. She was a lieutenant colonel, a decorated war hero. Every cruel word he'd spoken now echoed back at him like a curse. The lead federal agent, Special Agent Rebecca Moore, lowered her salute, eyes sharp and cold. "Dr. Evelyn Carter," she said respectfully, "we're here under Pentagon orders to escort you to the secure briefing at Langley. I apologize for this delay and for the conduct of airport staff." Evelyn nodded once, her composure unshaken. "Apology accepted, Agent Moore. But let's ensure this conduct never repeats itself, not for anyone." The statement was calm, but its edge cut deep. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd as dozens of passengers lowered their phones in disbelief. The woman they'd seen as a victim now stood taller than anyone in the building, a living embodiment of dignity. David's mouth opened, but no words came out. "I didn't know," he stammered, his arrogance dissolving into panic. His colleagues, once silent witnesses, now stepped away from him as if afraid of the fallout. Agent Moore turned to him with icy precision. "You didn't want to know. Your job was to verify credentials, not invent criminals. You destroyed classified property, obstructed federal operations, and publicly assaulted a military officer. Do you understand the gravity of that?" David's lips trembled. "It was a misunderstanding. I thought." "You thought wrong," she interrupted, her tone clipped and final. "And now you'll answer for it." The second agent, Mark Riley, crouched to collect the scattered pages. Each document was handled with gloves, placed carefully into sealed folders. The red Pentagon seals, the word "confidential" stamped across the top. They gleamed under the harsh airport lights like silent witnesses to David's failure. Passengers began to whisper again. "She's military?" one man muttered. "He attacked an officer?" another said. The energy shifted, from curiosity to anger. For the first time, the crowd's sympathy no longer belonged to the man in uniform but to the woman he'd tried to humiliate. Evelyn watched quietly as the agents secured her documents. She didn't gloat. She didn't even glance at David. Years in military intelligence had taught her that power was not in shouting, it was in restraint. Her silence said more than any speech could. When the agents finished, Moore handed her the restored briefcase. "We've arranged transport, ma'am. The Joint Chiefs have been briefed about the delay." Evelyn took the case, snapping it shut with a metallic click. "Thank you, Agent. I'll join you shortly." Then she finally turned to face David, the man whose authority had just collapsed. Her voice was soft, but it struck him harder than any reprimand. "Do you know what's in this case, Officer Cross?" she asked. He didn't answer. She continued, "Information that can prevent a war. The kind of war soldiers like my father, and yours, once fought to stop. And you almost jeopardized it because you couldn't see past your own prejudice." His eyes filled with shame, his confidence now dust. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize." She raised a hand. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to every person you ever looked at and decided they didn't belong." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The passengers began to clap softly, hesitant at first, then louder, a ripple of justice breaking through the tension. Phones caught every frame, broadcasting it live to a world that would soon know exactly what had happened at Gate 17. Agent Moore placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Ma'am, it's time." Evelyn turned toward the exit, her head high, her father's pin catching the light. Behind her, Officer Cross stood surrounded, not by authority, but by his own disgrace. As she walked away with the federal escort, whispers followed her, "That's the woman they saluted." By the time she reached the terminal doors, she was no longer just a passenger. She was a symbol. And for the first time that morning, silence in the airport didn't feel oppressive. It felt like respect. Why that afternoon, the incident at Gate 17 had already become the headline of the day. Every major outlet replayed the same clip. A TSA officer berating a woman whose calm never cracked, then the moment 3 federal agents stepped in and saluted her. The caption under every replay read, "The woman the FBI saluted." Inside the airport's operations office, chaos replaced routine. Supervisors argued about who should take responsibility, public relations officers fielded calls from reporters, and federal investigators had already sealed off Gate 17 for evidence review. Agent Rebecca Moore led the inquiry herself, her tone clipped and professional as she addressed the team. "Preserve every camera angle, every microphone feed. This will go straight to Washington." Meanwhile, Officer David Cross sat in a windowless conference room, wrists trembling as he signed his statement. Gone was the arrogance that had fueled his authority hours earlier. He looked smaller now, diminished by the realization that his own body camera had recorded every racist remark, every reckless act. "Sir," an investigator said quietly, "you understand you're being placed on immediate suspension pending federal review?" David swallowed hard. "I was following procedure." "Procedure doesn't include humiliation or assault," the man replied, shutting the folder. Across town, Dr. Evelyn Carter sat in a sleek black SUV, headed toward the Pentagon. She stared out the window at the city skyline, the weight of the morning still pressing against her chest. Agent Moore rode beside her, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, the director himself has been informed. They're already drafting a federal statement." Evelyn gave a slow nod. "Not for me," she said. "Make it for everyone who's ever been treated like that." By evening, news anchors across networks used her name like a symbol. Lieutenant Colonel Evelyn Carter, 22 years of service, 3 combat tours, recipient of the Silver Star, was detained by TSA this morning after a security officer accused her of carrying falsified documents. Moments later, FBI agents identified her as the lead Pentagon analyst on a classified peacekeeping operation. Clips of David's behavior circulated online within hours. His words, "You people think you're special," played on loop, dissected by commentators, condemned by veterans, debated by politicians. Public outrage poured through social media, hashtags flooding timelines. Hashtag dignity in uniform, hashtag justice at Gate 17. The next morning, David Cross's world collapsed completely. Federal marshals arrived at his door with a warrant for obstruction of national security operations and violation of civil rights under color of authority. The badge he once polished so proudly was confiscated, his airport credentials revoked. Cameras followed as he was escorted into custody, head down, face pale. Evelyn, meanwhile, addressed a small press conference outside the Pentagon. She didn't read from notes, her voice carried quiet strength. "What happened to me today isn't new," she said. "It's a reminder that power without empathy becomes danger in uniform. The system must change, not just for me but for every traveler, every soldier, every citizen who deserves respect." Reporters leaned forward, waiting for anger, but there was none. Only conviction. "I don't want revenge," she added. "I want reform." Within a week, Congress demanded a review of TSA's disciplinary procedures. The Department of Homeland Security announced a full-scale audit of misconduct reports. Hundreds of people who had been mistreated by security officers came forward, emboldened by Evelyn's composure. In the months that followed, new policies were signed into law, mandatory bias training programs, independent complaint reviews, and federal oversight on airport enforcement. The press called it the Carter Initiative, a legacy born not from power, but from grace under humiliation, and somewhere in a cold detention center, David Cross watched the news, seeing the woman he'd once degraded become a national voice for justice. For the first time in his life, he understood what real authority looked like. Not a badge, not a uniform, but integrity that never needed either. 6 months later, Dr. Evelyn Carter's name had become a symbol of dignity. What began as humiliation at Gate 17 turned into a national awakening that reshaped how authority, equality, and respect were understood in America. The viral video of her standing tall as FBI agents saluted her had reached over 200 million views. But Evelyn never sought fame, only fairness. That morning, she arrived at the Pentagon Auditorium, where hundreds of officers, students, and journalists had gathered for the first annual Carter Integrity Summit, a conference created to train federal staff in ethics, empathy, and leadership under pressure. The Secretary of Defense introduced her with a simple sentence. Some people command armies, others command change. Evelyn stepped up to the podium, her voice steady, her father's silver eagle pin catching the light. What happened to me at that airport wasn't an isolated event, she said. It was a reflection, a reminder that prejudice can wear a badge, carry a clipboard, or even sit in silence. But it can't win if we don't let it. The crowd listened in stillness. Behind her, on a large screen, played short clips of travelers, veterans, and officers thanking her for inspiring reform. I didn't want revenge, she continued softly. I wanted accountability. I wanted young officers to understand that the uniform is sacred only when it's worn with compassion. Her words carried the kind of calm that silenced noise, a calm forged through struggle. She closed her speech with the same strength that had made her famous. Dignity isn't something you're given. It's something you protect, even when the world tries to take it from you. The audience rose in applause. Some cheered, others wiped tears. In the front row, her daughter Maya recorded every second, her heart swelling with pride. Later, she posted the clip with a single caption. My mom didn't fight with anger. She fought with grace and changed the system. Meanwhile, David Cross, once the man who abused his badge, now worked in a community rehabilitation program after serving his sentence. He taught new recruits about ethics, using his own failure as a lesson. Every time he mentioned Evelyn's name, his voice broke with regret. She taught me that a uniform means nothing, he would say, if the person inside it lacks humanity. Back at the Pentagon, Evelyn stood near a group of cadets after the ceremony. One young woman nervously approached her and said, "Ma'am, how did you stay so calm when the world was watching you fall?" Evelyn smiled gently. Because grace is louder than rage. When you know your truth, you don't need to shout it, you live it. As the sun set over the Potomac, she looked out the glass windows of her office, the same skyline she'd watched the morning of the incident. She whispered to herself, justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears patience. The screen faded to black. Her voice returned, calm, resolute, timeless. When you see injustice, you have two choices, stay silent or stand up. I stood up. And I hope you will too. If this story moved you, smash the like button to honor every person who's faced prejudice with courage. Flex biceps. Comment, respect, if you believe dignity should never depend on color, title, or uniform. Red heart. Subscribe for more powerful true inspired stories that prove one calm voice can change an entire system. Globe showing Europe, Africa. Bell, and don't forget, your voice matters. Every share, every word, every act of kindness makes the world fairer. Backhand index pointing right. Share this video to remind others that real strength is not in anger. It's in grace.